All right, guys, welcome to my 7 round Green Bay Packers mock draft. This is the final video for all my 7 round no trade mock drafts. I don't think I'm gonna do like any. I might do a full 7 with trades of what I could think happened on draft night and that sort of thing, which would obviously be a crazy long video. Would probably think a lot about it beforehand, type of thing. But other than that, this is, the final one in my series. And obviously the daily uploads minus this last Sunday that I took off will come to an end, and we'll be back to kind of our regular schedule of uploading on Tuesday and Friday. Although I'm thinking of adjusting, Tuesday to Monday, to be honest with you, since it is off season. But without further ado, we're going to look over the depth chart. Obviously, depth chart I know very well. We have the wide receiver core is Dobbs, Watson, Reed. Watson, it's crazy to me that they don't have him as an injury here. Tore his ACL, and, is theorized to be back around weeks 10 to 13 at first, even though I've seen, the posts of him and he's jogging on the treadmill already. So we'll see. They perform miracles on ACLs nowadays, type of thing. Obviously, Dontavian Wicks, Malik Heath, and then the newly signed Mecole Hardman. I think Mecole Hardman could be a guy that obviously has a role, early on, depending on like trust and, that sort of thing and what Matt LaFleur wants to do, just because he has that speed. He has the experience of a championship caliber team, but he is also going to be the return man more than likely. Obviously, the other one, like the biggest, I guess, money signing for the Packers being Aaron Banks. I love this signing. People are saying, oh, if he can stay healthy type of thing. I don't think that it's going to be as bad of a situation as people think. I think that Aaron Banks has played well, and that left side of the Niners has been solid. We obviously have Trent Williams, and then they had Aaron Banks, and then their center. I think the left side was the clearly dominant side, and it's like people are saying, oh, well, it was all Trent Williams. There's no way that one lineman can define an entire side of the O-line. I'm sorry. I don't care how good you are. You're not going to be able to do much if you've only got one good lineman over there. Tackles and guards are both valuable. Every position on the line is very valuable, But, with that, they're moving Ellen Jenkins to center. I think it's a solid move. And then it's like we've got Sean Ryan and then Zach Tom. And obviously Jordan Morgan, who was a first-round pick last year, they're saying is going to battle Rasheed Walker. He's going to battle Rasheed Walker this year for the left tackle position. And then we've got the tight ends. We've got Tucker Kraft and then Luke Musgrave. Obviously both drafted in 23. Tucker Kraft, a beast. They're saying he's going to be more of a focal point and has been training hard this offseason. And has even said that, like, hey, I live here. And it's like someone asked him when he got back, and he's like, I live here full time. This is my home, and he's been training. And then they're even saying Luke Musgrave, hopefully he is healthy. I know that from personal being a fan of this team, that Musgrave has dealt with injuries that the team isn't even always aware of until he just can't play. Even last year he was playing, not looking good or getting targets really. And then he leaves with an injury. And then literally LaFleur is like, I was unaware of this. Musgrave didn't tell anybody. But it's like, overall on this offense, people are saying we need a wide receiver. I am of the opinion that if we didn't have as many drops as we had last year, people wouldn't be saying we need a wide receiver. And it's not like they were balls that were crazy ridiculous to try and catch. It was just inconsistency on the pass catchers. Obviously, to me, the running back room is one of the best in the league. I hope that Marshawn Lloyd can be healthy this year. The people were saying he was one of the better halfbacks drafted, in obviously the late, late day two, type of thing. But it's like, I hope he can be healthy because I think behind Josh Jacobs, it's going to be a crazy tandem. And then it's like even Emmanuel Wilson and Chris Brooks each had over 500 yards. And Chris Brooks wasn't acquired until like after mid-season. So it's like it's a testament to this O-line and the running back room being very, very solid. And as we all know, Josh Jacobs, he came back, last year after having a lackluster year before and a crazy year before that. Now moving on to the defense. I know that everyone is saying that, hey, we need, an edge rusher. Rashawn Gary's not playing up to his level. Kingsley and Egbari, a 5th-round pick. Obviously, Brenton Cox right here. And then Lucas Van Ness. People are complaining about him because he hasn't gotten that much of a pass rush. I think that it is disheartening and it kind of sucks. And you definitely see the pass rush disappear and be non-existent at times. But I do also think that it was a new system, and I mean, overall, the line seemingly just did not do as well last year. Like, this defense was honestly carried by, like, Edgerrin Cooper when he was playing very, very well. The coverage was very, very, very good last year, despite people saying we needed a corner. And, one of the highest graded coverage units in the league. I mean, obviously, McKinney had a good amount of interceptions. I think like a 7-game streak last year with 8 total on the year and that sort of thing. And then you've obviously got Jair Alexander, who was injured most of last year. And I honestly think to myself, we addressed at corner last year with Kalen Kane, who could be a good slot guy, could be a guy, to do that sort of thing. I think that Keyshawn Nixon gets a lot of unjust hate, but I think that he was improving last year. Nate Hobbs, I think, is a dog and a good, corner that they brought in. I think Bisaccia will be able to communicate with Hafley on like what he likes from Hobbs, having been his coach, when he was back on the team, because Hobbs, I think, is like a 5th or 6th year player or something like that. But, then the safety room, you've got Evan Williams, Xavier McKinney, and then Javon Bullard. Bullard did struggle in the slot a little bit last year, was off and on and that sort of thing. But overall, I think this defense had a huge improvement. And it's like, I'll be real. There are positions that I'm going to draft for the team just based on the player and the talent available. But it's one of those things that I damn near impossible. I don't think that the Packers are a team that you can predict what they draft, because I really don't even think they'll be here at 23. I think they're going to trade back to get more picks, But without further ado, let's do this. And obviously this team has 8 picks. 8 picks. So come in here. We have... and this is one of the other things that I think about too, is that if Rasheed Walker does walk in free agency next year, because I think that's the reason for the competition, and Jordan Morgan doesn't work out, I do think that tackle is a position they could draft here. If Kelvin Banks falls right here, it's something to me that I think that they could do. I think that they could go and they could grab Kelvin Banks, or maybe if Josh Simmons happened to fall, they could grab Josh Simmons type of thing. But you look at some of these targets for the team, and that sort of thing. It's like, I do think Azaraku would be a solid pickup. I think that Walter Nolan, would be a very good pickup as well. And you've got some of these other picks. It's like, obviously picking at 54, that it's like, in the second round, you could draft edge as well. I like Princely. I think, he could be a good player, but it's kind of one of those interesting things. It's like, they could definitely stay here. And it's like, I wouldn't mind them drafting Walter Nolan. I would not mind that at all. I wouldn't mind them drafting, Walter Nolan here either for, the interior of the D-line, as TJ Slaton left in free agency, and kind of the guy that's opposite Kenny Clark, is kind of an unknown right now. So it's like, what do I go? Do we go Ezuraku, who I think is a definite possibility? If we really need wide receiver, maybe we do go Luther Burden. Luther Burden, to me, it's like, you know, good production, not great last year, you know, had a worse year type of thing, and then it comes into that his effort, you know, is maybe an issue, which I just, you know, he's still very, very young. He's an electric player. You know, I'm just thinking that the Packers seemingly haven't broke that streak of drafting a wide receiver in the first round for a long time. I don't know if they do that for Burden, if I'm being real. I think if they want to go for Burden, they honestly trade down since his stock is sliding and, you know, that sort of thing. The pick I'm going to go for here, though, and it might honestly be somewhat of a wild pick that I haven't really seen that much, is James Pierce Jr. I think that James Pierce Jr. has, you know, and he also, they've said, has had off the field issues, but he's very young. He's very, you know, has that disruption type of thing. And it's like, you know, the amount of hurries that he gave, that would be a step in the right direction. The run stop rate, very good. The run defense also very good, which I know that Halfley values. He didn't allow like a 100-yard runner like that many times last season, you know, and that sort of thing. And, you know, I think it helped. I think it helped the coverage a lot too with that, you know, because you got to be able to allow short yards and then have them convert third and long from the air. So it's like, I'm going to go James Pierce. It might be kind of bold, but, you know, we got those other picks. But, oh, interesting here. This is actually something that I would definitely go. So I grab Pierce, and then we have Jaden Higgins fall. I actually, you know, Higgins, I just think there's no way that he falls this far, which is another reason why I think that the Packers may trade back is because they're like, oh, we want to get Higgins, but we don't want to spend a 23rd on him type of thing. But you never know with draft night, and Higgins has been moving up and up and up. So it's like, who knows? There might be a team that really, really likes him, and he gets drafted between 10 and 20, and the Packers don't have a shot to draft him. But if he's here, you're taking Higgins. Going on to this round, we have some wide receivers, tight end, center, halfback, tackle, guard. It's kind of one of those interesting things that it's like, to me, imagine, I mean, this might sound wild, but imagine if Goody was like, you know, I liked how well Josh Jacobs did, but with how Marshawn Lloyd was, and with Emmanuel Wilson, and then, you know, Brooks, you know, kind of as our depth pieces, maybe we want to actually, like, you know, grab another halfback in here, and we want to have really just a really strong, you know, and it's like, if you have, you know, just a really strong running back room, I could see them going Devin Neal, and it could be labeled as one of those oddball picks that the Packers make. Because the way they structured Jacobs' deal is that, you know, after the second year, they really have an out, you know, if they want to move on from him. Let's say that it was a 1-year wonder, which I hope it's not. I love Jacobs. I'm, you know, truly happy that we brought him in, you know, and then he runs for 1,300 yards. But it's one of those things that it's like, what is Goody thinking? Which I just don't know what he's thinking. And Devin Neal can spend, you know, the day as like the third running back. Because it's like, I'm kind of looking at a lot of these kind of, these, you know, positions that are available at this time. And I'm like, who do they go? They don't really need a tackle, do they? Do we still really need a tackle? You know? Could we go linebacker and we could grab, where was he? Jeffrey Bassa here? It's kind of one of those interesting picks. Isaac Tesla is someone I think they could easily go as like a Blazer if they don't, if they just want a true field stretcher type of thing, I don't feel like I know much about Jacob Parrish. Good coverage, completion percentage isn't crazy, good grades, did get worse last year, I guess, type of thing, but did allow less yardage, I guess. Maybe he's just good at keeping things in front of it, but it's like a 21-year-old, 198, 5'10", reminds me of Jair Alexander. We're going to go ahead and we're going to draft Parrish because it's an apparent need. Now moving on, we've got, wide receiver, halfback, a lot of, that, floating around here. We have Barrett Carter. I definitely think the Packers are in line for, a linebacker. Now, a run stuffer. They just brought back Isaiah McDuffie. This guy is smaller, very athletic, though. Could be a weak side linebacker, but his coverage isn't very good. And I just don't kind of see that. So I'm kind of thinking like, potentially Jack Kaiser. Kaiser, I think, can do, things very, very well. Has a very low missed tackle rate, obviously, and even has pass rush, which I think that, Hafley does value. As he blitzed Cooper, he blitzed Quay. He wants these guys that are able to do both, so we're actually going to go and we're going to draft Kaiser. So obviously with the first 4 picks here, we've addressed, every single need, and then linebacker, which I think is a potential need and that sort of thing. What is another position that I think, the team could bring in, We still have Tesla available here. It seems like, honestly, would he be a guy the Packers would go for if he was right here? Perhaps, and I'm gonna, but it's like I also see Kobe King here, and it's like if we look at the depth chart for linebackers and that sort of thing, it's like Quay Coop, McDuffie, Hopper, and then Christian Welch, who was brought back, and he did have a really good before final roster cuts last year with the Packers, but and fans were sad when he left, even though I think, but it's like you look at this, it's like you have young guy, Quay's still pretty young, entering the final year of his rookie deal, and then McDuffie's obviously, he's familiar with Hafley and that sort of thing. So it's like, would you double down and draft 2 linebackers? I've seen weirder things, but it's like maybe you bring in Kobe Kane, and it's like, here's the thing: Gutekunst said that they want to re-sign Quay Walker. What if Quay ends up being like, I don't want to resign here? There's no way in my mind that Goody does a franchise tag on Quay. He's just not that level of player, has only shown flashes of brilliance, has gotten better year after year, but it's like, what if he walks? And then you're stuck with, Cooper, Duffy, and Hopper, and you're just kind of moving backwards before next year. And I'm trying to think, because I honestly think that Goody thinks way far ahead, and that's one of the tricky things with him, is that it's like, you never know who he's going to draft, type of thing. And it's like, it hasn't been crazy for the Packers to double down. Like they doubled down on wide receiver, or even tripled down on wide receiver, the year that it was Dobbs, Watson, and then Samori Toure. And then it's like, and then last year, you obviously, we don't draft, any wide receivers. And then it's like, you have Reed and then Wicks in the same year. And then it's like, I even think about like Kraft and Musgrave, or literally, Musgrave in the second, Tucker in the third. So it's kind of nuts. I just do see it as a possible scenario that they're like, hey, let's grab this. Moving on to this spot. Let me see. Moving on to this spot, I do think this would be a spot for potentially, a, defensive interior, a position that we haven't addressed, and I think is definitely something important that, you address. Am I seeing anybody here? Tafuna? Don't really know much about this guy. Run defense grade average, run stop rate pretty good. It doesn't obviously get a lot of sacks, but gets some hurries here and there. But we do have Ty Robinson here. So I think this is nuts. This is actually going to be my guy. I'm going to draft him. I drafted him to the Chargers in the previous one. I'll draft him here as well. I think he's a player that could go much higher, to be honest. I think he's quickly emerging, and, he definitely addresses a need, and we have 2 picks remaining. So looking at these picks, what are we looking at? So I think that the safety room, despite having Xavier McKinney, who obviously played really, really well, Zane Anderson kind of stepped in as well when Evan Williams was hurt, and he played, better than anybody thought. Katan Oladapo was kind of hurt most of last year, didn't really see playing time, and then Javon Bullard mainly played in the slot. So do they really go there? I don't know. It's you'd think that the Packers, with all the young players in the Packers, you just really don't know how they feel about each player, which makes drafting for them, a mess. I think I'm going to look for offensive line here. I like Joshua. Well, for guards, I like Joshua Gray. Offensive tackle. Do we have any tackles up here? We have Xavier Truss at 265. I like Joshua Gray. I think he's a good size at 6'4", 310. Good grab grade. Hasn't let up a lot of protection miscues. We're gonna go ahead and we're gonna draft him. I do think that at left guard, obviously, you now have Aaron Banks, but let's say he doesn't pan out. Let's say he's just or he gets hurt. You need a backup type of thing. And looking back at, this, it's like your backup is Donovan Jennings, or I guess, maybe Jordan Morgan, because he did play a bit of guard last year before he was hurt. But it's like, overall, I think you're always looking for guys that are able to, be young depth pieces on cheap contracts. For the final pick, obviously at 250 here, I'm thinking edge rusher again. We kind of just looked over this. This kind of feels like, to me, it kind of feels like, we're doing the same kind of thing. I drafted Colin Oliver, to the Chargers because he had some crazy percentage and then he was injured. He definitely seems like the kind of guy that Goody would draft with a high potential. So, we're going to do that. They do say Donovan Ezeraku here, which I kind of agree with, but I feel like James Pierce is a better size and a better potential talent. But this is overall kind of nuts to me. They do say cornerback is a need. They say it's too much of a reach here, I guess. I guess they don't like that. I think that, linebacker could definitely be a position that is grabbed, type of thing. But it's like, looking here, I mean, you're kind of looking and you're kind of thinking, to me that it's like you've got some of these guys that, fell down. And it's like I said with wide receiver, I just think that the potential to, if you wanted to go grab a guy like Burden, you trade down. But that's the thing, is that I honestly think it's a very solid chance that the Packers trade down in the first round. If it's not a prospect that falls, that's like, we can't really skip this guy. But, tell me what you guys think. I would overall be very happy with this draft. I think that, you shore up the linebacker room, which, was a little bit of a piece of concern. And you did let Eric Wilson, drop back. Apparently Hopper is going to be the guy this next year. We didn't really see him that much in his rookie year. But it'll be interesting. And I mean, you always want to have a contingency plan, I feel like, especially with young players, and that it's like, you need to know if this guy can be it. can be it on your team. You know, doesn't have to be a crazy star, but he's got to at least play consistently. But you know, tell me what you guys think. Tell me, you know, if this would be a draft you would be very, very happy with. And, you know, overall, I think that this would be, you know, a really, really good draft, you know, for the Packers. And it's like a lot of C grades. But, you know, I could care less. I think that, you know, I think that this would be a draft that I'd be very happy with as a fan. And it's like you know, you address a lot of positions needing get depth, you know, in some positions that I think you should have depth in. But tell me what you guys think. And as always, go Pack Go.